Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark, one of my favourite places and one of the best beer cities in the world these days in my opinion, somewhere I do recommend that you go if you get the chance. But we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some awesome beers from these guys over the years. They do lots of different things and they are one of the famous Danish gypsy breweries, so if you haven't checked these guys out already, you really need to. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to Mikkeller, and today we're having a taste of the Hop Opera. So this beer comes in at 9% ABV. It's a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and it is supposed to be a pretty good one, this, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how it turns out. But this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment on the 18th of May 2021 through Systembolaget. So yeah, curious to see how it turns out. This is my first IPA from these guys in quite a wee while actually. The last beer I had from Mikkeller was the Treblood, which was a really nice Imperial Stout. And you know, Mikkeller, back in the day, they were always known for their IPAs. At that time it was the West Coasters, but these days they're doing a mix of West Coasters and New Englands, and their Imperial Stouts have always been pretty damn solid as well actually. But they do a whole host of different styles, and their beers are, you know, quite readily available across the world. So definitely check out this brewery if you get the chance. They should be fairly accessible to you wherever you are. But yeah, always nice to review new beers from Mikkeller, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, let's get cracking then. As always with my review, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mikkeller before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly because I live very close to Denmark and I do love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Mikkeller then, on to my brewery notes. So Mikkeller, as I've mentioned to you already, are the famous Danish gypsy brewery, and they were founded back in 2006 by Christian Keller and Mikkel Bjergso, although they're now run exclusively by Bjergso, who used to be a physics and maths teacher. Christian Keller, from what I understand, left in the very early stages of the company because he wanted to have like a kind of core range of beer rather than take the experimental model that Mikkel has adopted for the company. And Christian, I think, went on to work for a magazine called Soundhouse in Copenhagen, if I'm remembering correctly. But again, these guys are very influenced by the American craft beer movement, and they basically started out as the homebrewing experimentations of Christian and Mikkel and grew from there. But for a long time they didn't have their own brewery. They brewed at a variety of host breweries in America, Norway, Scotland and Belgium, and a good chunk of their beer is still brewed at the Proefbrouwerij in Lochristenhoofd, just outside of Ghent in Belgium. But their home base as such was also the Mikkeller Bar on Victoria Gade in Copenhagen, the original one, which I do recommend you check out. And they've also got a collaboration bar with Toul as well, whose founders are former students of Mikkel's, and that's the Mikkeller and Friends bar, which is in, I don't know if that's still in the Nuremberg border actually, but yeah, Mikkeller and Friends bar. I still need to go and check that one out at some point. I've never been there. But a little bit later on, having done gypsy brewing for quite a long time, in April of 2016 they took over AleSmith's former brewery in San Diego after they moved on to a larger space, and then the following year in 2017 they announced that they were going to establish a second brewery in the States in Citi Field, which is home of the New York Mets, and this actually closed just last year in October of 2020. They were citing the pandemic as being the main cause of that, but apparently there were a few things about the structuring of the company not being exactly clear over there, but they decided to consolidate their brewing operations in the States over in San Diego. But these days they've got quite a few different locations across the world actually. They've got a location in Copenhagen which is called Balhavn. This is where they experiment with sour beers. They've got 12 oak fodders ranging from 3,000 to 7,000 litres and about 50 different 225 litre California Chardonnay barrels. This is what they use to age their beers, of course, although I think they've expanded their repertoire of barrels over the last little while. And they've also got a brew pub called War Pigs, which is in the meatpacking district, and that is a collaboration with Three Floyds Brewery from Munster in Indiana, close to Chicago, over in America. But the beers that they brew at the sour beers that they brew at Mikkeller Bauhaun are actually brewed in War Pigs and then transported up in tanks, and then that's where they're aged and blended actually. They've also got a lab up there where they can isolate new strains of yeast and have their own house yeast and things like that, and this place also has a tap room. But yeah, there's various Mikkeller bars throughout Copenhagen these days. As I say, there's War Pigs, there's the Ramen Tobiru locations, which are very, very good. That's the most authentic ramen I've ever found outside of Japan. There's Ulo Brewed, which is right next to the original bar. There's the Mikkeller and Friends one. They've also got their little location in the food hall as well, the Mikkeller and Friends bottle shop, which is pretty cool. But yeah, various locations throughout Copenhagen itself, but they've also got various bars in Barcelona, Madrid, Berlin, Warsaw, Bucharest, Stockholm, Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands, Tokyo, Seoul, Taipei, Shanghai, and there's also a few other locations in San Diego and Bangkok in Thailand as well. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Mikkeller for the moment. The only other thing to mention is that they're an extremely prolific brewery. It's very difficult to keep up to date with all the stuff that Mikkeller are doing. But if you do get the chance to try some of their beers, I highly recommend that you would. And Mikkel's brother, of course, Jeppe, is the man behind Evil Twin Brewing in the States as well. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Mikkeller for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a little look at this beer itself then. So, just to let you have a little look at the artwork once again. As you can see, this is the kind of standard style of artwork that you'll find from Mikkeller, which is pretty cool. I forget the name of the artist of this one. I always forget his name. But yeah, he's, you know, it's kind of iconic, this sort of artwork within the beer industry now. But there you can see this one is issued by Mikkeller Copenhagen. This beer itself was actually brewed at Total City over on Sjælland in Denmark, actually, Svininge, if I remember the name of the town right. But yeah, basically right in the middle of the Sjælland Island, which is the island upon which Copenhagen sits. But yeah, imported into Sweden by our friends at Brill & Company. 440ml can, this one. This was a little bit more expensive. This one cost me 65 Swedish kroner, so that is just shy of £6 sterling. It's €6.50, and I guess it's maybe somewhere in the region of $7.50 American. So I'm not sure what you would actually pay for this beer over in the States, but the recipe was developed in San Diego, from what I understand. Then they've just rebrewed it at Total City. But yeah, Mikkeller are actually brewing quite a few of their beers at Total City, as well as using the De Proefbrouwerij in Locriste Hefte in Ghent in Belgium. But yeah, like I said earlier, 9% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and this one is hopped with Cascade, Simcoe and Mosaic apparently. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see what it has in store for us. So my first New England IPA from Mikkeller in quite some time, come to think of it. I honestly couldn't remember what the last one I had from these guys was, but I think for the moment that'll be enough to take a look at the colour and aroma and all of this kind of thing. So yeah, just checking that this is lined up there. But yeah, I do like the artwork on it. It makes me think a little bit about Freddie Mercury and things like that, Queen. So yeah, anyway, as you can see with this beer, it's poured exactly kind of as you would expect from a New England IPA. So this one's a lovely kind of bright yellow colour. This one actually looks a little bit brighter and richer on the camera than it is to the naked eye. So this one actually looks along the lines of a kind of, the colour of it looks a little bit more like a kind of pineapple juice rather than a rich sort of mango juice as you're seeing it on the camera. But the head, just before it disappears, it poured with about a quarter to a third finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That is starting to fade away now, just to leave a kind of thicker ring around the edge of the glass. But it looks, it does look very, very nice. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall it does look very, very nice, this one. So yeah, kind of exactly as you would expect for a New England IPA. Remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, it's determined by 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. Adjuncts and barrel aging of course play a role in that as well, but not in the case of this beer. But yeah, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But yeah, it goes together very, very nicely, I have to say. But yeah, the level of haze in this one as well for a 9%er, it is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest. It does have a little bit of soupy, gloopy character to it, but certainly not the thickest one I think I've come across. But yeah, the level of haze is determined by the oat content and the wheat content of the beer, and that varies, of course, from brewery to brewery. But yeah, in terms of a New England IPA, nothing particularly surprising about this one. A lovely kind of lighter yellow colour for me. One of the paler ones I've come across in recent times, I would say. But yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing surprising about this beer in terms of appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. That actually smells very, very nice. So, first impression is that it's got a nice little bit of depth to it. Actually, you do get a nice little bit of bite from the malt base and a bit of smoothness in there, but it's got a lovely kind of smooth green component to it and some lovely juicy characteristics. It feels as if it's very, very balanced actually. But yeah, as I've told you, in my opinion, at least with New England IPAs, you can take them in quite a few different directions. They can be more sort of farmhousey, and they can be sort of more farmhousey and yeasty. They can be a little bit more kind of rye and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, sort of barley malt leaning and bready, or a little bit more kind of brown sugary as well actually. But yeah, usually these beers will display a few different characteristics, and you're getting a few different things out of this one, I have to say. So yeah, it does actually smell quite similar to some of the Tool ones that that we've had before though, but maybe a little bit different. Some of the breadiness smells quite similar, I would say. But yeah, the aroma of this one is very nice. It gets a thumbs up from me. But let's break that down a little bit then. So the backbone of the beer, you can smell that lovely sort of smooth white bready barley malt character out of this one. It's like a soft, fluffy, fresh white bread. Behind that, you do get a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness out of the beer, which I can certainly appreciate. There's a nice kind of smoothness from the oats in here as well, but the oats I don't think are overly prominent. You know, you get a little bit of that smoothness and slight sweetness out of the oaty character to this beer, but I would say that overall it's more barley malt lean in this one, I would say. It's more, it smells more like a kind of fluffy white bread, but yeah, as I say, a bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, a bit of smooth and slightly sweet oatiness sitting on top of that, but I also get a wee touch of you know, a kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy type element out of the beer as well. So yeah, it's got everything that you would expect of a kind of modern New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So the malty side of things goes together really nicely, and I always feel that the malty side of a beer is underappreciated a little bit these days. But yeah, let's have a little look at the hoppy side of things then, and have a look at that. Yeah. So as I say, the green component of this one is actually very nice. It comes across as just really fresh, actually. I think we're getting this beer in pretty good condition, in fairness. But yeah, the aroma that is, the green component in this one is very, very nice. So you get a tiny little bit of earthiness at the back of the nose from this one. That's the mosaic that's going to give you that. But, you know, as you get towards the front of the nose, you've got a lovely, big, very deep floral aromatic component out of this one. The hops in here, of course, Cascade is the original American high alpha acid hop, about 8%, gives you a lovely sort of figgy and grapefruity note, I always find. Simcoe in New England IPAs, it's going to give you a very smooth, kind of juicy mango and passion fruity note, I think. And you know, it's about 12% alpha acid if I remember rightly, and Mosaic again is American, 14% alpha acid, you know, soft juicy tangerines, and all of those hops will give you a nice big green component. So it's got a lovely big floral depth to it. I wouldn't describe it as spicy, but it is, you know, very aromatic in a sense. Then there's a good little bit of grassiness out of this beer as well. It's got a lovely kind of bright grassy quality to it, this beer. So yeah, the grassiness has a wee bit of zestiness to it. And the other thing that I'm noticing with this is that you can smell the grassiness. Actually, the grassiness and the floral character actually help cover the booziness of the beer a little bit, which is really interesting. So yeah, the aroma of this beer, the green component of the beer, is I think is really, really nice. So yeah, green component of this beer is absolutely lovely. So yeah, I think it just gives the beer a nice little bit of bite, and it builds a good bridge with the wheaty side of things. But yeah, for the fruity side of the beer, then it is kind of as you'd expect, to be honest. You can smell that more pungent passion fruity note from the Simcoe, but at the same time you get a little bit more of a kind of smooth and more mellow passion fruit, as well as a little touch of mango, I think. And you can smell the Cascade. I always find Cascade is a very distinctive hop to me, and that's because one of my favourite beers in Scotland that I used to drink quite often, the Harvest and Schiehallion, that was a Cascade hopped Czech style Pilsen beer. You know, I'm just so familiar with Cascade off the back of that, and you can smell that lovely sort of slight figgy note sitting underneath the tropical fruits from the Cascade. Cascade is just such a distinctive hop in there, but I guess at the same time Cascade is also going to contribute a little bit to that sort of tropical pungency that the beer has, because it can give you that wee bit of a grapefruit element, but you also get that lovely juicy tangerine element out of this beer too from the Mosaic. So you're getting the soft side of the Simcoe, the soft side of the Mosaic as well. There's maybe a wee touch of pineapple to this beer as well, come to think of it. But yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business, actually. So yeah, big thumbs up to Mikkeller on the aroma here. Lovely soft juicy fruits, a very bright floral aromatic component, and just a nice kind of smooth malt base to it. So yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's about time we had a go at this one then. Let me just fire the rest of it in, because you know that's just what you do. There we go. Maybe I need to get a slightly bigger tulip glass for these 440s. But yeah, there we go. So yeah, this one is the Hop Opera, a 9% New England Hazy Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Mikkeller, based in Copenhagen in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, it's pretty solid actually. Very, very smooth beer. As I say, it's the first impression I have of it is not quite as floral. I thought this one would have a little bit more of a kind of floral bitiness to it, but this is a very, very smooth, and actually it feels like it's very kind of oaty leaning New England IPA. So yeah, that's interesting, because I thought this one was going to be a little bit more floral, and I thought it was also going to be a little bit more kind of wheaty and bitey from the aroma, to be honest with you, because the oats really took a little bit of a back seat, but in the flavour, yeah, it comes across as very smooth and sort of creamy in a sense. So yeah, food for thought here, definitely. Yeah, where to start with this beer then? I'm going to say straight up, this is a solid. It's definitely a solid beer, this one, just not quite what I expected from the aroma, but sometimes you can get that with these beers, of course. So yeah, let's just try and break the aroma of this beer, break the flavour. I always do this, I don't know why I mix up the words flavour and aroma these days, just it's what happens when you film reviews tired. But yeah, straight away across the middle of your palate, then you get that nice sort of crisp white bready quality. That just goes right across the middle of your palate there. And yeah, the bread, it sort of thickens up a wee bit later on into the flavour, but yeah, it's got quite a crisp sort of soft white bready component to it, this one, which I can really appreciate. But yeah, how would we say, the malty base of this one is just very, very smooth and really creamy actually. But in fairness, you know, you do start to get a little bit more of the wheaty bitiness out of this beer later as well. And yeah, this beer, the other thing I'll say about it is for a 9%er, that is stupidly drinkable. It really is. But yeah, as I say, backbone of the beer is a soft white bready character there. It does have a wee touch of a kind of crispness to it, which I can certainly enjoy as well. And then sitting on top of that, as you go down the kind of middle line of your tongue in that middle third of your palate, you can feel the nice smooth oaty character, and it just kind of spreads out gradually towards the edge of the palate there. So yeah, soft white bready note, nice kind of oaty smoothness sitting on top of that. And then in the dead centre of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of brown sugary circle in there. There's a wee touch of a there's a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy type thing to this one, which I can appreciate as well. So yeah, you've got a little degree of sweetness out of this one, but the brown sugary notes are not too prominent, I would say. This beer's more about the oats. I think that it's really an oat-centric New England IPA, this one. So yeah. And I think that covers the how do you say? I think that covers the middle third of your palate, to be honest with you. I think that's it. But yeah, other than to say at either end of that middle third of your palate, you do get just a little touch of a kind of bread crusty element to it there, but that's nice. So yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of thicker doughy bready build up there with a wee bit of bread crust. Then into the back third of your palate you can feel a bit of smoothness from the wheat, and then at the very back of the tongue you've got a little bit more of a kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing. And then yeah, sitting on top of that, you've got more of a kind of yeasty, you can feel the sort of yeasty component to the beer, so that there's that sort of thicker yeasty component to it, and it's just nice and light and airy. So when you start at the back of the palate with the beer, the flavour starts being like sort of this tall, and as you move further forward it just gradually condenses down. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it goes forward into that middle third of your tongue, and it just squashes down a little bit more. So yeah, the back third of your palate and the middle third of your palate are really nice in this one actually. So yeah, I like how that I do like how that goes together. So yeah, malty side of this beer I think is very nicely done actually, and this beer does build a wee bit of slickness actually the more that you drink of it. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. Again, I think that'll be the mosaic, but then as you move further forward the earthiness smoothens out quite quickly, and then you start to get the nice bright floral aromaticity out of this beer. And again, Simcoe, Mosaic and Cascade are all going to contribute to this. And round the front curve of the palate you've got a nice little bit of a lighter grassiness, as well as a kind of sort of how would we say, just a bit of a more kind of zesty, grassy quality to it as well. So I can really appreciate, as I say, how this goes together actually. Yeah, fruity juicy side of this beer as well also just kind of builds into it nicely. But yeah, the green component of this one is quite mellow. You do get a bit more depth to the floral aromaticity, but in the same way it feels quite bright and quite fresh, generally speaking. But yeah, it works. Remember, these New England IPAs are more dependent on late edition hops rather than early edition hops, so it kind of makes sense the way this one goes together. Early edition hops of course give you more bitterness, whereas late edition hops into the wort boil, they give you flavour and aroma, and that's exactly what you get out of this one. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that slightly thicker doughy bready kind of thing, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a more kind of smooth white bready quality once again. Then on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And yeah, the other thing that's a bit different about this one compared with the aroma is that the sort of pungent side of the tropical fruit is a little bit more kind of passion fruity, and it's just not quite as pungent as I thought it was going to be. But it actually tastes a little bit more like grapefruit, I should say, not passion fruit. It tastes a little bit more like grapefruit, and it's just not quite as pungent as the aroma would have you believe. So yeah, interesting. So yeah, let's start with the fruits at the back of that front third of your palate then. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of a, so you do get a wee tiny hint of grapefruit in there, and the grapefruit I think grows the further you go into the aftertaste, but then you get the more kind of, you start get that little bit more mellow passion fruity note there, and as you move further forward from that, it starts to mellow out to a softer passion fruit, and then you get a sort of juicy mango-y kind of quality out of this one as well. But the passion fruit I think is the most kind of pungent point of this, and that's the Simcoe that's going to give you that, and the sort of cascade I would say is going to sort of build the potency of the grapefruity side of the beer. But yeah, as you move further forward on this one, you can feel that underneath gradually you get that sort of very light kind of almost, I always want to describe Cascade as a very sort of figgy kind of quality. You get that, it feels like the Cascade is the sort of backbone of the fruity component underneath the Simcoe, and then what you're getting from the Mosaic as well. So it feels that sitting on top of that bready layer, you've almost just got a little bit of a very light sort of almost figgy kind of element to the beer, and then as I say, stronger sort of passion fruit, a little bit of a more mellow, juicier passion fruit, and then as you kind of move further forward on the palate, you get a little bit more of a, you do get a few kind of more mango-y, apricot-y type elements. Then in the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's a lovely kind of light, juicy tangerine that starts to come out of the beer, and that of course is the Mosaic. So yeah, just behind the kind of front tip of the palate, you've got a wee bit of a kind of lemon limey element to it as well. So there's some really interesting stuff going on with this beer, I have to say. I do like how the beer goes about its business for sure. So yeah, it's a very soft New England IPA, and that's not what I expected from the aroma. It's a very soft, oat-centric and slightly slick and creamy New England IPA. This one, I thought this one was going to have, I thought it was going to be more kind of soft and bready and sort of wheaty and bitey, but it works out nicely, I have to say. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again, and it covers its alcohol stupidly well. So I think on this note we should round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So overall, I would say that this beer, where would we put it on the scale? On the scale, I would say that this is a fairly, it's pushing it's mid to top end of mid-bodied, smooth carbonation. It's got a slight creaminess to it, and also a slight little bit of slickness in there as well. And yeah, it works. It does work very, very nicely. But the fruity juicy side of this beer is just it's absolutely lovely. But the how do you say, the hoppy, the sort of hoppy side of the beer, I would say that this is quite a low bitterness one, but in fairness the bitterness builds a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. So I think it probably is maybe about I think it's maybe about a 35, maybe even pushing 40 IBU beer. It just feels a little bit more bitter the further you go into the aftertaste. But guys, remember, one of my weakest points of beer reviewing is telling you the IBU. That's not the best, that's not my strongest point, my strongest suit with beer reviewing. So could be wrong on that, it could be a little bit less, but I want to see maybe about 35 or 40 IBUs, and that's normal for a double IPA. You would expect it to be a little bit more bitter, but the malty base is very, very smooth, and it develops a bit of creaminess and a slight sweetness to it later on. Then you've got a lovely juicy fruity component to this one. The Cascade, I think, forms the backbone of the fruity side of things with that little bit of figgy note, and then the Simcoe sits a little bit further back, and then you get the more orangey tangerine notes from the Mosaic in it too. But a lovely beer, this one, once again, and thumbs up to Mikkeller. It's always cool to review some new things from these guys, pardon me, and I'm glad that we're getting a few beers from these from Mikkeller regularly through Systembolaget now. So yeah, I guess we can round off this review there then. This one was the Hop Opera, a 9% Imperial Double Hazy New England, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Mikkeller in Copenhagen. This one was brewed at Tolo City out in Svinninga, just to the west of Copenhagen. And yeah, developed originally at Mikkeller San Diego as well. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite Mikkeller beers are, and I will see if I can get a hold of some of those and review them for you on the channel. But yeah, check out my social media, check out Mikkeller's social media, and I'll see you guys soon on the next review. The Hop Opera, 9% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Mikkeller in Copenhagen in Denmark. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys soon. Slange, skull, and cheers.